Hello, dear Bruce. Hello, you from Ukraine. I'm very glad to meet you. How are you?
I'm okay.
Okay.
I'm a little tired because I work Saturday and Sunday, and we got home real late Saturday night. And we live upstate now, so it takes us 2 hours to get into the city each way. And I do the driving. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you for your time, Bruce. First of all, tell me please a little bit about yourself for our Russian-speaking space. Where do you live, or do you do, etc.?
What do? I sometimes take pictures. Now, I lived my whole life in New York City until 6 years ago. We moved 60 miles outside of New York City because if I don't know if you're familiar with New York City, but it's changed. It's become very gentrified, and it's not the place that I knew. And for example, I was born in Brooklyn. Now, if you go into Brooklyn, it's unless you go deep into the heart of Brooklyn, where I go now, into those areas where you still have neighborhoods. You know, they're really run down and everything, which is really good. I enjoy it. It's very romantic for me, even though I drove truck in these areas and stuff. So I'm familiar with them. But in the other areas, it's all gentrified, and I just don't like the people, and I don't like what's become of it. But there's nothing you can do about it. That's what's going on. So, okay, I think I answered that one.
Yeah, thank you. Bruce, tell me please, how did photography come into your life, and how did you learn this art?
I was at university, and I wasn't really interested in doing anything, so I figured, what can I try? So I said I'm going to study acting, and also, which I thought was more natural for me. What I mean by that was I was okay looking, and I didn't know how it would feel going on stage, memorizing lines. I didn't think it out thoroughly. But also, photography was in vogue then. At that time, they had the movie Blow Up by Antonioni, which I don't like the movie, but everyone misquotes me and says, "Oh, he really liked Blow." No, I didn't like Blow Up, but that made photographers. It's about a photographer who sees a murder accidentally, and he photographs it. So photography became very popular. So I took acting courses, and I took photography courses at the same time at night, and I quit university. And one day in my acting class, my teacher's assistant got up and he did Shakespeare. And I said, wait a second, with my Brooklyn accent, I'll never be able to do Shakespeare. And I enjoyed doing something for myself, because the only thing I'd really done for myself up until to that point, when I was 19 years old, was play sports. So I really enjoyed developing the film, which I'm terrible at, printing, which I'm terrible at, but it's something I was doing for myself. I enjoyed having a camera, and that was it. I just got stuck. I knew that's what I wanted. I dropped the acting. I drove a taxi cab to support myself. I drove a truck for my father also to support myself. I could work like 2 or 3 days a week. And then, I just kept with it. And it was very good because I also, later in my life, had a drug problem. I almost died on cocaine. And I think because of the photography, the belief I had and the passion, it, made me go through all of that. And because photography for me was very interesting because it's something, being a good athlete, I could move in and out quickly. I had the mobility to do that. I also was very fast. I'm still at my age, almost 75, fast with the camera. And I think quickly. So all those things combined, and I said, this is pretty good for me. And I could also go out in crowds and not talk to anybody because I'm basically shy, believe it or not, and I didn't really want to talk to anybody, so I could just go out with the camera and photograph. And the other thing that was very good for me was that I am able to, I knew what I wanted to photograph. I always like people that are not your average people. But I also learned my craft at that time because I just took a developing and printing course at Visual Arts, and I took a course with Ralph Hattersley. I'm basically self-taught, but I learned by looking at photo magazines, books, and going to exhibitions. And I'd look at the pictures, see the ones that I liked, and if I liked it, I try to figure out what lens they used and where they stood, the person. And then I never called anybody because I didn't want to call people, and I never showed anyone my work because I didn't really trust them. Because let's say I do a good series at Coney Island, and people aren't always nice, and a famous person says, "Oh, that guy did good pictures at Coney Island. Why don't I go there?" Then he shows the pictures, and then it looks like you did it after him. So I always went my own way, and that I guess that's how I learned it, you know. And then eventually I became myself because I combined all these people who I liked, and then it became me.
Bruce, I know that you joined Magnum Photos in 1998. Yes. Could you tell me, please, how did your journey to Magnum start?
Well, I don't know. They always had at least when I was younger, you know, people, their pictures get shown a lot, and, you know, there's some good photographers. Not everybody in Magnum is a good photographer. Some are good, some are better, some aren't as good. So I guess, you know, I thought they did good work, and, you know, they probably could help me to sell pictures, okay? I knew nothing about the business, and it took a long time till I became a member because I don't know if they were ready for me. You know, my style of photography, because it's not only a select group, it's also, you know, they have their tastes, you know, and if they're not into it, you know, that's it. So then eventually someone called me and said, "Why don't you apply?" So I said, "I don't understand why you want me to apply now. I'm like 50 years old or something, 51. And he said, "Well, 2 different camps like your work, the journalistic camp," and he named some names, and the artistic camp. So I said, okay, I applied, and then I got in. And I would have to say it helps for recognition because it keeps you alive because they do many things. But I don't think it has anything to do with my basic photography style-wise. You know, it hasn't changed me because I'm a strong character, and I was already developed, and you know, I just go along by way. And also these days, a lot of decisions Magnum makes I don't agree with. We can leave it at that.
Yeah. But you know, the Magnum has always been considered a certain elite among photographers. Has your joining Magnum greatly influenced your career, your photography career?
No, like I said, I don't think so. The only thing, for example, I get a good amount of fashion work, okay? And I don't think, you know, Magnum, even though they've gotten me some of those, you know, jobs, I think I would have gotten those jobs probably anyway. So I don't think it's changed anything. The only thing I think, what I think it does help is it keeps you out there. You know, you're current. In other words, your name pops up here. You know, you have group books, group this, group that. But other than that, I don't think it's, you know, I think I could probably go on my own, and I don't think it would be much different now. It's just that I do get certain things from them, so it does help economically. And, you know, it's generally a good group of photographers. I mean, quality-wise, still, I would say the best in the world. So, you know, it's okay. But we have our differences, you know.
Bruce, could you tell me about your unique style of street photography? This style is like nothing else. How did you discover it for you? I mean, working with flash.
Well, it's not a question of look. You are who you are, okay? I never listen to what anybody says about me, okay? Because I think I know myself pretty well. I know my strengths, I know my weaknesses, okay? And anyone can say anything to me as long as they're not rude to me or trying to put me down, and I don't take offense. If you're trying to put me down, then I have a little bit of a temper, okay? But the thing is, this all developed over time. In other words, like I said previously, that I looked at magazines, I looked at books, exhibitions, and there are people I liked, you know, and the people I if I didn't enjoy the photography, or for me, sometimes you see a photographer you know is very good, but it's not you. So I'm not trying to learn from that person, okay? I learned just by looking. And eventually, you know, when I started, I am not photography, I'm not a technician. That doesn't mean that I'm ignorant technically, but I'm not the person who knows why, you know, if you use the flash at a certain speed, this happens. You know, I don't care. I know results, okay? I know what works. I know what doesn't work, okay? I know what I have to do to try and get that, all right? Now, so what happened is, in the beginning, you know, obviously, we're all influenced by things we see. So I was influenced by certain photographers. So obviously, as I was in the learning process, I guess my pictures would look more similar to some of these photographers, okay? And then eventually, I was strong enough to take all these people together, and then it just became me. So in other words, I used flash a lot, and the reason I used flash in the beginning was because, not in the beginning, but early on, it took me years to use it because I was afraid of technique. So I didn't understand it, so I said, I can't do that. You know, I'm not going to learn something new. That's too difficult. And it isn't difficult because it's quite simple, actually. You know, you have X amount of settings. You know, if you're this far away, you do this. You know about the ambient. You learn all of this, okay? So after going out, I had about 600 rolls of film that I had shot in New York, and I wasn't happy because there was too much sun, shadow. The main subject wasn't emphasized strongly enough. I said, that's it. I'm going to use flash. And that's all in my book, Lost and Found, okay? So I'm not going to get into it. But after I started to use the flash, and I was really happy because I was experimenting. You know, I didn't know what the hell I was doing, and I was doing this, I was doing that. I used the shutter speed at about a 15th of a second or a 30th of a second, which was once in a while you get the killer picture, but the other times the pictures get destroyed because there's too much going on in the background. It goes into the foreground's face, you know, a line. So now generally, well, now that I use digital, I use it's about 100 and I think 75, something like that. So my pictures generally are stiller in the background. There's not as much motion. But I was also a good athlete. So that meant I can go in front of people quickly and I can see what I wanted to get what I saw. But you have to also understand when you see something and people are walking, when you decide to take the picture because you've seen them, generally there still is a time until they get to you or you get to them. And the other thing was that I do a lot of verticals. Someone said, you live in New York, so it's a vertical city. But no, I think because of the fact that when you're walking towards people and they're coming towards you, no matter how evasive you try to be from them, you know, not get in their way, they separate. So if you're going to do a horizontal picture. So this way, vertical, it's a lot easier to not make them separate. So all these things are involved as why I became me. Also, I have a pretty good bedside manner. What I mean by that is I try to make the person, you know, if he says something, if they say something, I try to make them smile or laugh or whatever, okay? And I think I have a pretty good track record for all I've done in my life because when you're comfortable doing something, you can do that well. When you're not comfortable doing something, you know, like people who imitate, some have it, some don't. And if you don't have it, you're going to be uncomfortable in the movements you make. You know, it's like from sports I learned, there's no thinking process. All your thinking is done beforehand. You act and you react. You see it, you react. But everything has to be pretty right, okay? And early in my career, I would say I was too much of a perfectionist. But then you learn with flash, it's also freeing in a way, because once you decide to take the flash picture, you take it, okay? Even if the person went like this or, you know, wasn't looking the way you want them to look, you take it because you have to, it's just a different process. And my pictures are, I try to involve the viewer in the picture. In other words, I don't want to have like some people do, and some people do it really well. I'm not saying the pictures are bad. No, they're not. A stage set, I would say. Like my earlier pictures, you're viewing something from the outside. You know, it's like you're watching a play, and you have all the people on the stage. Mm-hmm. Me, I put the viewer and myself in the picture. So, because I always, the quote that struck me when I started photography and I didn't know anything was the Kappa quote. If it's not good enough, you're not close enough. That rang true to me the first time I read it when I started photography to this day. So like I say, the older I get, the closer I get, okay? But who knows, maybe in the next couple of years I'll make people like Lilliputians. I don't know, because I can't get much closer than the face portraits, which are not candid anyway. That those people have all given me permission to photograph them. So, you know, but that's close. I don't know how much closer I can get unless I do details. So I don't know if that answered the question, but somewhere in there you have the answer.
Thank you. Bruce, you still shoot on Leica now?
Yeah.
And what focal length you shoot usually, you prefer?
Depends which camera you're talking about. If you're talking about the candid pictures, it's 28. Mm-hmm. See, but even when I did my candid portraits in the street, I did it with a 28. Most people wouldn't do it with a 28. But, you know, I always was my own man. I was strong enough to know that if I like it and it looks good, you go with it. It's like someone can tell me something about my photography, and most people don't have a clue, okay? But sometimes somebody says something that's poignant and makes sense. I listen, I'm not a genius. I'm really smart about photography, and I think I'm very smart about pictures. So, you know, why they work, why they don't work, what has to be in there. Because I spent 55 years looking. And also I have the experience of being in the street. You know, I get a little bit, well, I won't say annoyed, but it's interesting to me that you have these people that sit behind desks that tell you how you should photograph. I mean, you know, they don't know shit about it. They really don't know anything. If you want to know something about it, you go out and you do it. Yeah. If you don't, then you can't make the same comments. I don't care how intelligent you are. Because, you know, people will say, like these days, I'm not getting into it, but, oh, you can't do this. That's impossible. The essay I'm doing now, which I'm not going to discuss, goes counter to what everybody says that you can't do or you shouldn't do. You shouldn't and you can't. But when you say you shouldn't and you can't to me, and if I'm interested in doing it, I'm going to do it. Not because you said that, but because I'm interested in that. And then I prove all the time to myself that you can do it. If you're passionate about something and you want to do it, that's what one of your questions was, what about, you know, young people? You know, my answer for that one would be that be yourself. If you're interested in doing it and you want to do it, try it. Because if you don't try, you failed already. I mean, you didn't do anything. So, you know, then the question becomes, are you smart enough, or your ego isn't too large to know that you're not good at it? You know, through my whole career, I've always been compared, when I started, even if people didn't like the pictures, they would always compare me to Diane Arbus, Ouija, Klein. There always was a comment like, you know, where this one is this, you're that, okay? So, and I think what happens with a lot of people that look at my pictures, you have to look at them. You whether you like them or you don't, you have to look at them. And I think, you know, there are some people in the field that are jealous. There are other people that just don't want to like them because you can't do it this way. Who said you can't do something some way? You know, if you're comfortable and, you know, you're not hurting anybody, you can do what you want. I mean, if you want to stand on your head on 57th Street and 5th Avenue and take pictures, that's okay. I don't care. And, you know, people have these set ideologies. What I learned, one thing, a good lesson in photography is that, for me, is that when you come up against a wall That's why I'm not a big fan of ideologies, okay? These people that have all these ideologies, well, whatever, I'm not going to say, but I don't believe in it, okay? Because ideologies means you're stuck. Everything has to fit that. What happens when you run into a brick wall? Then you have to, your ideology, you can't go through the wall, but you believe in your ideology. You know, you have to go left, go right, back up, whatever, okay? So that's what you learn. This approach doesn't work, so maybe I try that one. Like sometimes when I work, if I'm in somewhere and someone says no to me about something, oh, you can't do that, you know, we don't want that. I try to figure out a way how to change their mind. And many times I do, because I'm clever, you know, I'm smart about it, and I'm honest. I don't lie to people. I'm honest. I tell them what I want to do. I tell them this is what I want to do, you know. And I think honesty is always the best policy. But if you have an ideology, like people have an ideology, you know, I'm just not interested, you know. I've won the battle in my head over them, you know. And that's just what I believe.
Thank you, thank you. Bruce, I know that you took a series of photographs with the Japanese Yakuza Mafia. I think these kinds of people are usually hidden and don't really like attention. Tell me, please, how did you manage to position them to you and get closer to make such unique shots?
Well, I don't think I did anything special, okay? In other words, some I met on the street, and I don't speak Japanese, and I just took pictures. And sometimes they were inquisitive, and they would have someone who spoke English ask me, what am I doing? And I would explain it to them. And it was okay. Other times, I met a friend of mine who my wife knew, who's my wife is French, and she used to be a journalist. So I stayed with a French guy who was a journalist, and he met somebody who knew somebody, and then I was able to get in for a couple of days with people, a couple of hours, and they were fine with me, and I was fine with them. And I had to buy them lunch. Then they bought me lunch. It works like that. But generally, I don't think I did anything special. The question is, if you have a personality that they like and they feel you're truthful and real. And I would probably think that it's easier for a foreigner to do it than a Japanese. But again, if you know anything about the history of Japanese photography, there was a guy who did a book called Flash Up in the 80s, which I have the book. And he has a few good pictures in there, and there's a lot of Yakuza in there. So, and he's Japanese. So I'm sure, and don't forget now also, the Mafia, the Yakuza is all registered. Mm-hmm. You have to be registered. Now, what does that mean? I don't know. I know it means that the police know that you're a Yakuza, mm-hmm. But, I was invited over their houses and stuff. I didn't go because I was too busy taking pictures. Because, see, that's me. Even if it might help me in the long run, I was stupid, okay? If I had to do it over again, I would go to the houses, because that would open me up to more things,
Bruce, street photography is the genre in which perhaps all the rules of composition are most often violated. In your opinion, how does a good photography differ from a bad photography? Good composition differ from a bad composition?
Well, that's hard. Well, I can give a quite simplistic answer, but it's a hard one to answer because, I feel that a good photograph should work well across the frame mm-hmm. and have a strong emotional content. Okay, now, what does working well across the frame? A lot of young photographers today think composition is irrelevant, okay? Doesn't matter. I got the picture of the Yakuza, or I got the picture of the bird, and he's in the picture, it's fine. I don't believe that, okay? I think when you look at a picture that's good, and I give a lot of workshops, okay? So the workshops are good for me because sometimes, I chastise people, and I say, that's not good because it doesn't have good form. And then I go back to my Coney Island pictures, and I say, my pictures weren't as well formed because I was younger. So I think what I'm trying to say here is that if the composition for me doesn't bother me, then it's okay. In other words, there could be defects. Or, for example, my pictures I would call, like Cartier-Bresson was a decisive moment, I'm the indecisive moment, okay? And what that means is that I don't care if you chop an arm off or you chop somebody's head off. That makes more for a strong picture because it's a little chaotic. But the chaos has to be well formed and well balanced. So, for example, like in a workshop, I'll tell somebody, well, you see your picture. You have so many things in there. It almost makes it, but it doesn't. It's almost an organic way that you view the picture. If everything in there, your eye works organically, and this thing goes into that, which goes into that, and there's no set form on this, because sometimes when a picture is too perfect, it's not as good, because it just looks too perfect, okay? Mm-hmm. So you want to have it look like it's not perfect. So you, as the master of ceremonies, captured all of that and put it together. It's really hard to do. I don't care how much you know, like I know how to make a picture, okay? But you could go out there for 2 years and not get a good one, really strong one with many things going on that works well. So if your eye goes across the picture and you don't have to go like this to that to there, it's fine. And many times in these pictures, details are what make the picture. In other words, there's a guy, he turned his head this way in the background. That screws up the picture. If he turned this way, it would have been great. Mm-hmm. So as much control as you have over the main things in the picture, you don't have total control over the minute things that go on. So, and I don't work as much like that any longer, okay? Though this series I'm doing now, I have a lot of horizontals, which I haven't done for years because and it's also in color, which I never did color till about 7 years ago. So, because each series, I'm going to Italy because I'm continuing a commission in Sicily in about 2.5 weeks. So what I'm going to do, that's in black and white. I already know what I want to do. Okay, each thing has its way of looking at it. But again, I should stress, in all the years that I photographed, I don't know if I can come up with a definition of street photography. Mm-hmm. Like I said, something about dirty, it's in the British book. I said something about if you can smell the street and feel the dirt, then it's a street photograph, But I don't know if you can take a street photograph indoors, which I think you can, because it's sort of like a style. I think you can take houses outside too. They're all on the street. So I think it also talks a lot about style. But I think what's wrong today with a lot of street photography is everybody thinks they're a street photographer. And they're not. And what else happens is they have this generic way of looking at things. There's no personality, which of course people could argue with me that I'm incorrect, but that's all right. That's their right. I think I know that. But I would like to see a little, not only master of the form, but master of the content. Okay. And I think that's what separates the men from the boys. Like some people think that it's okay, and some people that are pretty well read on photography, that you should be totally objective, But there's no objectivity in photography. Where you pick where to stand, you pick when to press the shutter, you pick what you're photographing, what's objective. Everything is subjective, But they're talking about people like me who are more subjective, or many others like me. There are plenty others like me, as far as subject matter goes, or, what we're interested in photographing. So, but, I feel strongly about these beliefs, and I'm more than glad to be on a panel, but what can I say?
Thank you. Bruce, and the last, if I were your photography student, what would be the very first important things you would tell me about photography? What should I know at the very beginning?
Yeah, I said that. Be yourself. Because after I started, I was giving workshops for years, and I would take people out and show them how I worked the flash, and then people are quite impressionable in the class, you know. Doesn't matter if I'm doing the class or some other well-known photographer. A lot of people some people in the class do pictures like you. Doesn't matter. One week, you know, there'll be a landscape guy, and next week there'll be a street photographer. The week after there'll be still life, whatever. Okay. So I realized two things from my workshops. I realized that everybody should be themselves. Don't try to be someone else. So my title, my workshop, Be Yourself. And another thing I realized, which now I just forgot, and I'll try and think of it again, but to think of, you also have to be quite passionate about what you want to do. You can't, you know, like I had one kid a young adult, he was Italian. I said, well, okay, what do you want to photograph? He says, I don't know. I said, you don't know what you want to photograph? We took the workshop here. I think we're in Boston. No, we're in Italy. That's right. No, Spain, sorry. And I said, you don't know what you want to, I said, you're in bad shape then, you know, because if you don't know. And the other thing I learned, that's the other thing I learned from the workshop is when I tell people to look at magazines, that was the opposite of what I was instructed to do when I started photography. They said, don't look, just be yourself, you know, just go out. And I looked because I needed to know where I'm going. You know, I had no clue. So I was getting my ideas of what to do from looking at other people. But of course, you're going to be more imitative at that point until you become yourself, if you become yourself. So I think it's important to look at things, see what you like, but not everybody knows what a good picture is, and they're never going to know what a good picture is. So I said, how instructive is that? You know, but again, you know, like there are people that I take my workshop that I help after the workshop because I know they're passionate, you know, and I know they care. And if I can help them, I will. And others, you know, just go off to the wayside. But I think, and also, people should learn that it's very hard to make money. And they don't teach you that in school. Because we have tons of people working at Magnum that all went to photo school. And then they're working 5, 10, 15 years in Magnum, you know, doing their pictures when they can at 3 o'clock in the morning or something. And, you know, then they're not taking pictures. So it's very good if you have a husband or a family that's rich or you're rich, or you can support yourself doing something else and do your photographs. But that's something also that they don't teach. So what else can I say? I don't know.